Here we go. Alright guys, I am back. Welcome back to my channel. We all know that Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, was just absolutely awful, but here's how we fix it. We throw it all out. It's been pretty well known for a while that Disney is considering just throwing out the sequel trilogy, pretending like it didn't happen. Maybe not officially saying that, but they're just... you know, they're not really marketing it. They're not really, like, from everything that I've seen, they're not pushing it in any way. They're not doing any sequels or spin-offs. Obviously, 2020 has kind of canceled a lot of things that people had planned, but they didn't even announce this, like, beforehand. Usually you get, like, oh yeah, there's going to be a Lando Calrissian series. Oh, there's going to be another Han Solo series. I'm not hearing anything. I mean, there's talk here and there about little things here and there, but it's almost like they just want to put this thing to bed. Now, so here's what I want to talk about right now. There was a sequel trilogy prior to the Disney version of the sequel trilogy that was known as the Thrawn series. I have the Thrawn series right here, all three of them. I can tell you that this is the way the sequels ought to have gone, and prior to Disney taking it over, this is what was the canon before Disney said we're throwing it all out, because these books are top notch. I read all three of them. We start with Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and then the final one, which is The Last Command. All of these are from the thrift store. That's why they're kind of falling apart. I've had these books for years and I never read them because I thought, well, eventually they'll end up making a sequel trilogy and I don't want to have read these and then have them thrown out. Well, unfortunately, they did make a sequel trilogy and it sucked. So I read these in my morning of the disastrous sequel trilogy, and I was like, why didn't they just do this? So let me give you the gist of it. Basically, there's three storylines going through this series. One is Luke. He's dealing with his desires to have a new Jedi Order. He's dealing with his sister and his now brother-in-law are about to have kids, and he's getting like these weird Force readings from a potential Force user, and he's like, oh my gosh, is there a missing Jedi? But Yoda told me I was the last Jedi. Yoda told me that I was the one that was the last Jedi, so how could there be another one? Well, we find out that there is another one, but is he a Jedi or is he something else bad? And so we find out throughout the series. So that's the first plot line right there. The second plot line is obviously Leia and Han are about to have kids, and Leia is dealing with political upheaval. Admiral Akbar is accused of embezzling money from the New Republic. There's all this political upheaval going on, and Leia's having to deal with that while she's under attack because basically her kids have become like this political football, essentially. Like the Empire wants to kidnap her and use the kids, you know, I mean, she's having twins, so the Empire wants to take them away from her and turn them into little mini Sith, essentially. And so she's in hiding and on the run from these people that are trying to kidnap her, and she ends up meeting some of the hired assassins and convincing them that what they're doing is wrong and whatever. And there's a whole bunch more to the story that I'm not telling you, but that's kind of how it starts. And then the third storyline is there's this arms race between the New Republic and what's left of the Empire, and each side is fighting for ships. There's a shortage of ships for them to fight with, and so each side is trying to find more ships and bring more ships to themselves. So at the end of the first book, which is Heir to the Empire, there's a huge attack on one of the Republic shipyards, and throughout the second book, which is called Dark Force Rising, it is discovered that the missing fleet, called the Katana fleet, which was, I think it was something like 200 of their biggest dreadnought ships, they had been presumed missing, and there was no trace of them. They weren't destroyed or anything. They could not be found. They were found. And so Han Solo and Lando are kind of teamed up for this whole thing. There's kind of this race to find these missing ships and to bring them over to one side or the other, because it's going to shift the balance of power and potentially decide whether the New Republic is going to survive as it is, or whether the Empire is going to be able to rebuild itself and wipe out what's left of the rebellion. Why didn't we go this route? I mean, even if you had to recast the original characters, it would have been better than doing what they did, but they didn't. So there's a couple of new characters in this series that I really enjoyed. One of them was the bounty hunter, whose name escapes me, for heaven's sakes. His name was Talon Card. I don't know why that was so hard for me to remember. It's very simple, but I really liked his character because he kind of took the place of the old Han Solo character because, oh, believe it or not, Han Solo actually progresses past the original trilogy. He's still the original Han, you know, he's snarky and he's distrusting and all of that, but he's respectable. You know, he's got a wife, he's got kids. You know, he even says it to Lando in Return of the Jedi. He says, "Oh, you've gone respectable, have you?" So, like, it's nice to see he actually grew up. Same with Luke. He grows up. He becomes more serious-minded, and he's you know, thinking about other people before his own sense of adventure, which, again, is he's grown up past the original trilogy. We didn't see a whole lot of that in the new sequel trilogy from Disney, which sucked. I can't say that enough. The other character I really enjoyed was really the highlight, which was Mara Jade. Now, she basically is the Rey of the series. Only she's a good Rey. Like, she has anger issues. She has backstory. You know, she doesn't remember her past because her mind was wiped by the Emperor. She remembers that she was taken to work for the Emperor when she was like something like 19 years old, and then he trained her and all of this, and he's not related to her. He trained her and made her into his kind of mini apprentice that he could manipulate and, you know, buy with basically power. He gave her power and prestige. And when Luke allegedly destroyed the Emperor, I know it was Darth Vader, but she believes that it was Luke that destroyed the Emperor. She lost all that power and prestige, and so she's got this massive chip on her shoulder and this huge grudge. She wants to kill Luke Skywalker because Luke ruined her life. That's kind of how she's introduced into the series. Eventually, obviously, she comes around because, for those of you who are familiar with the stories that I'm reading, she ends up becoming Luke's wife in much, much later series. So it's interesting to see how that whole thing, she starts out as this assassin who wants to kill Luke Skywalker, and by the end of it, she realizes the truth. Now, I will say this. I thought that the ending, the author of the book, clearly his favorite movie was Return of the Jedi, and I thought that the very end of the last book was unfortunately the weakest part of the book because he kind of tried to rip off Return of the Jedi. The rest of the series is fantastic. It's all new stuff. It's not ripping off the other trilogy, but definitely towards the end, he had this fantasy going with trying to recreate the scene with the Emperor's throne room. And like, guy, just make your own thing. Like, you were doing a great job. I'm not going to spoil the ending for you guys, but that's all I'm saying. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than what anything Disney has put out ever. And so it's frustrating to me that they just ran roughshod over all this great content. They could have gotten these books and like smoothed out the rough parts and like fixed a couple of little details, and they could have had a fantastic sequel trilogy. But no, we can't because Kathleen Kennedy, and because feminism, and because purple hair, and because we hate men, and all this stuff. Come on. This is how we could have fixed the sequel trilogy. Use the source material you have there. I know Kathleen Kennedy very famously said, we have no source material to pull from. Duh! You have it right here. It's right here in gold. It's like framed for you. It was made for you all right here. It's perfect, and you guys could have used it, and you didn't. So that's my basically, number one, it's my review of the Thrawn trilogy. I thought it was fantastic. Outside of the ending is a little bit weak, but there's this beautiful, iconic scene. The very last scene where, spoiler alert, obviously, as I've said, Mara Jade does come around. The lightsaber of Anakin Skywalker is found, and Luke gives it to Mara Jade so that she can train to become a Jedi. And it's just this really, really iconic, beautiful, touching scene at the end where the assassin who was sent to kill Luke Skywalker now becomes basically his apprentice. And eventually she becomes his wife, but it's really fantastic scene. And like, why couldn't we have used any? Like, come on, people, is it that hard to make a good Star Wars movie? I don't know why we can't just, like, we had such gold right here. Anyway, so that's my review of the Thrawn trilogy, and also my summary of how we can fix the sequel trilogy is throw out the garbage that was already done and do your best to kind of try and take this Thrawn trilogy and maybe recreate it in the TV shows or something like that. Have there be some tie-ins, maybe even with The Mandalorian. I'm not the biggest Mandalorian fan, but if that's how we're going to save Star Wars through The Mandalorian, then that's how we're going to save Star Wars. There should be a separate series, I think, even if it's just a cartoon series about the Thrawn trilogy and about all of the expanded universe, you know, books and novels that have been made for decades prior to Disney just deciding, you know what, we can do a much better job because we want to sell toys. So if you like this video, if you agree with what I have to say, please comment below. If you disagree, please also comment below because I want to fight with some people. So comment below all of your comments, all of what you thought. Have you read the Thrawn trilogy? Did you like it? Did you like the sequels? If you hate the sequels, please comment. If you love the sequels, please comment so I can fight you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you can get those notifications, and I will talk to you on the next video.